Hi, I'm David O Sullivan. We are involved in I think, a very exciting venture, and I hope that this is something that is going to continue. It's the first IRIS session. It's brought to you by the Change Exchange, and tonight we're going to be talking about tech-savvy parenting and how, as parents, we can embrace technology while still protecting our children. I think any parent now will be running into the problems of cell phones, iPads, even TVs interfering with child rearing or assisting with child rearing. Is it a good thing or isn't it? The great thing about an IRIS session is that anyone can join these sessions. They can exchange views as well. It's an extension of BrightRock's Change Exchange. It's an online platform. You must go and check it out. I'll give you all the details. And it provides people with a space to ask questions, share knowledge, share experience, access tools that will help them cope with life's biggest change moments. Change moments are the times when everything from your sense of identity to your personal finances are challenged. When you get married, when you start a family, you buy a house, leave a job, start a new job. As you know, BrightRock's needs-matched life insurance is the only life insurance that is uniquely structured to change at times like these. So let's get on to tonight's topic. We're going to talk about tech-savvy parenting, raising children in the 21st century. It's very daunting, as you might, if you're a parent, you will know, especially when it comes to connectivity and technology coming into our lives. We have with us, well, I'm loath to say a panel of moms, because that makes them sound like soccer moms. They're more than that. They're very savvy people. They're no strangers to the debate. They're people who can actually, I think, educate us a lot, inform us about not only from their own experiences, but from what they've read, what they've researched on this matter. So let me introduce you to the three of them. I'm going to group two of them together, Stacey Vee and Cath Jenkin, because they have co-founded a digizine, if I pronounce that correctly, digikids.co.za. So let me go to you first, Stacey Vee. Good evening. Thank you so much for being part of it.
Good evening, David. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, digizine, have I pronounced it? Yeah, digizine. A magazine, a digizine called DigiKids. What's it all about, Stacey?
DigiKids is where parenting and technology collide. We look at technology from the viewpoint of parents and help find apps, phones, tablets the kids might be interested in that parents should be aware of.
Cath, you're also involved. How did you get involved with DigiKids?
It's a really funny story. Stacey actually mentioned the idea of the project to me, and I was already researching the whole intersection of technology and kids in my personal capacity as a parenting journalist. So when we realized that we could work together on this, it became a very easy partnership. And we've always shared the same sort of goals when it comes to integrating tech into our children's lives, and sharing our experiences as well, but also being able to provide parents and kids with useful information around technology. And because kids and technology isn't just about education or entertainment, it's an opportunity to create a relationship and a family conversation too.
I think it's a much debated topic, Stacey, and I'm sure you found DigiKids expanding its need, lots of demands as technology improves and as parents start realizing the impact of technology not only on their children but on themselves as parents. How fundamentally do you find this a dynamic process to run DigiKids?
One of the biggest challenges we're facing with DigiKids at the moment is creating content that appeals to all ages. The struggles that parents are having with their toddler, grabbing the cell phone and spending too much time playing iPad games are very different from the challenges that parents of teenagers are experiencing, and how to keep their teenagers safe online. I mean, there's the sexting issue as well, the privacy issue. And for me, just to cover that broad scope and provide useful information to parents across that wide age range is forcing us to ever evolve the type of content that we're creating.
And now let me bring in our third member, Nicki Dadic, joining us as well. Now, Nicki Dadic, well, her husband David Dadic is well known to me on the Oscar Pistorius trial channel as our social media commentator, as well as a fabulous attorney who uses social media so well. I'd imagine, Nicki, in your family, in your household, technology is part and parcel of the game. It's all pervasive.
Absolutely, David. Yeah, Dave, as you know, I've been involved with the trial. And I mean, I'm not involved with DigiKids, unfortunately, maybe not yet with Stacey and Cath. But I'm integrally involved in the digital world myself. I work in social media. I deal with people, online on a daily basis. And yes, tech is part of my life. I mean, my children are 5 and 3, and part of bringing them up for me has involved tech. I mean, from apps on my phone, describing kind of what I'm going through while I was pregnant, to what I should expect in terms of milestones. These are all things that arrive on my cell phone, and it's been like that for the last sort of almost 6 years since the first time I was pregnant. So absolutely, tech forms such a massive part of, I think, it's a massive part of our life. It's a massive part of probably most families' lives, and I think it's something that it needs monitoring. It needs kind of rules and regulations in all homes.
Right, I'm going to get you. You're going to start in a few minutes. Tell me about your own rules and regulations, but let me take it to you, Cath. What kind of rules? Are there hard and fast rules and regulations, possibly in your own household or in general? You can take it whichever way you would like. No, let me actually get it. In your household, are there rules and regulations about the use of technology?
Well, I have 2 things to tell you. Number one, my daughter is watching right now, so I better be careful what I say. But in truth, we worked out the rules and regulations together. And I think that's an important part of creating rules and regulations around tech. The rules and regulations are quite simple. She's 9 years old and very intelligent and very tech savvy and is utterly able to navigate in the online space and very happy and confident in terms of downloading her own apps, sending her own emails, etc. But we discussed, before we gave her a tablet, we discussed the kinds of rules and regulations and the kinds of things that might happen online or that she might come across. So we have a couple of rules. Number one is that the tablet comes home to me at the end of the day. Number 2, she doesn't download anything without supervision. Number 3 is that if there's ever anything that makes her uncomfortable or she's uncertain about, she asks the question. And these rules were made, and there's quite a few other like niggly ones that are quite app-specific and things like that. For example, her Instagram accounts. She has an Instagram account. She uses it beautifully, takes amazing photos, but I'm the one who monitors who she follows and who follows her. So she has a private locked account. And that's these things were discussed with her and they keep being discussed with her as she discovers new things or wants to try out a new service or what have you. So it's always a discussion. We've not had the situation yet where I've had to come in hard and fast and make a mom rule. I imagine that will happen at some point, though. Sorry, Cam.
Well, it's interesting, the point. I think you answered both my questions there by what is special in your household. I think it applies generally as well. What you're saying is very careful monitoring by a parent, which I think is the sensible approach there. Stacey, you've got 3 kids, and interestingly, you've got Travis the Lionheart, who is autistic. I have that in common with you. I have a 10-year-old son who's just loves technology, also autistic. And we can talk about whether you treat an autistic child with technology differently. But you've got Travis, who's 6, Ryan, who's 2, and Oliver, who's 1. What are the rules in your household regarding how technology is consumed?
At the moment, the biggest consumer of technology in our household is Ryan, who has just turned 3. We've got 2 rules. The first rule is he can't spend longer than 20 minutes to half an hour on his iPad. Yes, I say his iPad. He has an iPad. We're supposed to be sharing it in the family, but don't tell him that. He doesn't believe it. Sure. And the second rule is no iPads after dinner time. And this is a rule that I apply to myself as well. I try not to have any screen time before I go to bed at night. I find it disturbs my sleep. You don't have your cell phone next to your bed when you go to, I put it on charge in the kitchen downstairs. So I try to separate myself and my family from the screen before we go to sleep. And this includes the big screen as well. I don't really like it when my kids, fall asleep on the couch watching an animated movie. I don't think it's healthy.
Nicki, let's go to you. I'm trying to remember how many kids you've got. Is it 2 kids?
I've got 2 boys, Dave. Yeah, our rules kind of have changed quite a bit. When Luca was born, we had an iPad, and it was essentially my iPad, which very quickly became his. Listen, it's definitely got its benefits. Luca is an incredibly intelligent child, and I don't want to give all the credit to Dave and myself, but he's definitely learned a lot of things from the iPad in terms of, reading. I mean, he's 5.5. He reads, he can spell, he's incredible. He really is an incredibly smart child. My problem is that, as a small child, so he kind of started probably using the iPad at about 2.5-ish. They don't know, when enough is enough. And obviously with small children, especially at that age, and Stacey will tell me that she'll agree that it's difficult for them to understand that, yes, there's the 20-minute rule, but it's difficult to understand that, and it's pretty difficult to enforce. It's difficult to take it away without them having a complete temper tantrum. So like I said, our rules changed. It started at the beginning where I almost thought it was a bit of peer pressure. Do you want to answer? Do you want to say something, Stacey?
Oh, no, I just wanted to say we actually have a trick at home with Ryan, because he doesn't understand when to put the iPad down. So we switch it off and we tell him the iPad is flat.
Yeah, always good to give a little white lie. I'm partial to that myself.
I agree.
When it comes to the experts, and I use it quite loosely, I'm sure there's so many psychologists, social scientists, technologists who are analyzing these things. And one of the recent research I was reading from the States was saying that children under the age of 3 should have no screen time whatsoever. And when they say screen time, that's TV as well, not even looking at an iPhone. Is that something you guys would agree with? Stacey, let me start with you. No screen time for a child under the age of 3.
I think it might have been a child under the age of 2. I'll have to check that out. But David, I think that's a good thing, but it's really, really hard to enforce. I don't know about Cath and Nicki, but when I come home after a long day at work, I like to unwind by catching up on a series, a binge watching a series, 2 or 3 episodes at a pop. And my kids watch this behavior and they learn that sitting in front of the TV is a great way to relax. And as much as I feel that is no screen time is a great rule to enforce, I don't know how to do it, but instinctively I know it's a good thing. I believe that study that you're referring to actually said that kids who spend too much time in front of the TV, there's actually a neurological delay. Their brains don't wire the way they should as a result of it. Almost like their synapses become lazy.
That rings a complete bell with me when I consider the therapists at my son's school, Bella Vista, who have monitored these things very carefully and have all said that they want to ensure that my son Michael doesn't have any access to screens prior to doing homework. They don't want him to access any screens. He mustn't be watching cartoons while he has breakfast, for example, for exactly that reason, that it overexcites him. The stimulation, they'll go into discussion about the hypothalamus, which will completely lose me. All I need to know is it makes him overexcited. They would prefer that he doesn't have that screen time. So it ties in exactly with what you're saying. Nicki, I noticed you were nodding as Stacey was chatting there. Do you want to add something to that?
Yeah, if you just look at something like, the way there was a video that did the rounds, it was a while ago, with a little baby, flicking through the pages of a magazine and not understanding that it was actually turning a page, and it was kind of, and for me that it was so sad watching that. You first watch it, you think it's kind of funny, but it is, and it's not natural. It really isn't a natural thing. And yes, I understand that it's 2014, things have changed, technology is a massive part of all of our lives, but there's a period of a child's development that is so crucial to things that they're not going to affect them now. It's going to affect them in years to come. But if they're not getting these initial skills right, because technology is almost in their way, it's going to affect them in the long term.
Cath, you want to add something there?
Absolutely. I completely agree. you know, I'm going to say that I agree with the point that children under 2 shouldn't have screen time, but I don't think, as Stacey and Nicki have said, I mean, I don't think it's modernly possible. It feels almost, I mean, I will openly admit to you that the television has helped me be a parent. When I was a single mom, it was a lifesaver for me because I could put my kid in front of the TV and I could make us dinner. There was no one else in our home to kind of take care of the child while I boiled some pasta. So it's not always modernly possible, but then I also feel that if there is some kind of a guideline whereby parents are able to say, okay, my kid will watch half an hour of TV while I cook dinner, but also we will spend half an hour before they go to bed reading a story together in quiet time. I think committing to doing something that's not technology related is important. The whole notion of sticking a kid in front of TV until they go to bed, I agree with you completely. There should be at least an hour of no screen time before they go to bed. Absolutely.
Stacey, if we are going to say, in fact, let me just give myself a bit of a click. If we are going to say no screen time for children under the age of 2, and I think you're quite right, the research is 2, not 3. Once the child turns 3, then how should a child be introduced to technology? What should they be looking at? When I'm trying to think of apps, I know CBeebies can be incredibly educational. Well, for me as a parent, incredibly annoying. If it's the Teletubbies, for example, I will scream if Tinky Winky invades one more time. But how do you then start getting a child involved in technology? Have you got some thoughts on that?
Yes, I do. Do you know what apps are really great? Storybooks, digital storybooks. So it's quite funny because Nicki was sharing the anecdotes about the 18-month-old baby that was trying to flick through a magazine with her finger, and I'm almost saying the opposite. But I think it was Goodnight Moon that I downloaded for my boys. It was one of the very first apps. It was free for the App Store for a limited time, and it just introduced the idea to them. You know, just the simple paging through a story, and if they touched certain things, the little character in the storybook would react. I think that's a great sort of introductory, low-tech way to introduce them to apps. And then, of course, you get more. Let me give an example. There is an app called Old MacDonald's Farm. It costs $2.99 in the App Store, and it's quite fun. And it just sings the nursery rhyme Old MacDonald's Farm in the background, and you can touch the little cow, and the cow leaps up with an umbrella over his head. And then onto slightly more complicated apps. Ryan is using an app at the moment where he traces the letter of the alphabet with his fingers, and it makes a really fun sound as he traces it, and it shows by way of little lights that light up, you know, what the correct direction is for his fingers to go in. So I think these are useful apps as opposed to gratuitous games that are based on Pixar movies.
Exactly. Well, and Nicki, you got some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure what we're doing in terms of the questions popping up on the side here, but it's actually someone that I know quite well. Michelle has asked, can we share our sources for information or recommendations about appropriate new apps for your kids? And Michelle, I just want to tell you that you just don't need to look any further than DigiKids. Stacey and Cath are recommending amazing apps for all ages of kids. Really appropriate. These girls know what they're talking about. So Michelle, check out DigiKids.
Well, Nicki, thank you. Thank you for pointing out that there are questions at the side, because I'm not getting any questions on the side. I might rely on you. Cath, you want to add things there?
Well, first of all, thank you, Nicki. That means a lot to Stacey and I can tell you that right there. I will keep going, and I'm going to remember that. I just wanted to answer 2 of the questions I see on the side here. First of all, Sarah, you asked how old is my daughter? She's 9. And then I see there's another question here about related to video games. I think it's a bit off topic from the apps question at the moment. But when it comes to video games, I'm a big believer that the gamification and kind of the ability for children to enjoy video games and online games and app games, a lot of it lies in the educational experience that children can have through it. So when it comes to choosing games that your child plays or that your family gets involved in, I think it's up to the parents' discretion. You can decide what is your there's always guidelines. There's wonderful websites like DigiKids and Common Sense Media that can guide you in terms of what's appropriate per child. But that kind of thing should be monitored by parents. I do hear horror stories of parents going out and buying their kids, like, you know, the latest. I'm a bit out of the loop when it comes to computer games. So the latest Counter-Strike, I don't know if that's still cool. This is the last thing I played. And I don't think that's necessarily appropriate for a child of 6 to be playing, because it can be very gory and what have you. But I don't have an issue with exploratory games and educational things whatsoever.
I just want to pick up on something Stacey mentioned, and it's the app where you're actually reading stories to a child. It seems to me that if they say no screen time for a child under the age of 2, you do want to read to a child, and I find that if I'm not reading a book, why not use an iPad that has some wonderful animated apps, or Old MacDonald, for example, and there's the cow saying moo. So in that case, I would be saying, if that's appropriate for a child under the age of 2, why not allow them that screen time? How about that, Stacey? Am I just trying to justify technology for an under 2-year-old?
Well, you know, I actually found myself in a very similar position recently. I was writing an article called Top 10 Apps for Kids Under the Age of 18 Months. Because my boys have been, you know, from the age of 18 months already started exploring apps on my iPad. And then I took a step back and I thought to myself, Stacey, you can't advocate, surely you can't advocate for this. So I changed the heading to Top 10 Apps for Kids Under the Age of 3. So, you know, it's a really fine line to walk. I don't want to go to, I think it's a bit of a cop-out answer to say, judge if your kid is mature enough to handle it. But it's a tough one. Maybe that is the answer. Maybe you do know your child best, and you should decide. But yeah, I think you should try as hard as possible to keep that screen time to a minimum when your children are under the ages of 2 and 3.
Well, certainly the research has shown that is the case. I'm happy to buy that. I suppose many people use. I'm now talking about children who are older than the age of 2 that you want to introduce to technology. I think, Nicki, you were the one who was saying that this is the modern era. This is the 21st century. Children need to understand this, need to make it work. In terms of education, I would imagine iPads, well, I've seen it from my own child's education, iPads are becoming more and more and computers more and more of an educational tool. So it is critical for children to be exposed to technology, isn't it?
Absolutely. I know that there's a very affluent school around the corner from us here, and they have an incredible iPad lab. I mean, it blew my mind when I saw it. It really is incredible, and I suppose, you know, it's a junior school as well. It's not a high school, so it's for children, you know, sort of from the grade 0 to grade 7 age. So absolutely, it's there, and they will have to know about these things. And this also kind of, I just want to relate what I'm saying now to another question that's kind of come up about, her name's Gwen. She's asked a question about her grade 2 daughter. She was given a project and could either type or write it up. And she said she insisted that she write it as she's still learning to spell and write. And these are basic skills which must still be learned. And I cannot agree with that more. I do agree that iPads are fantastic. And yes, why not show them the iPad if you're going to be reading them a story in any event? It's kind of almost the best of both worlds. My issue is that children are starting to, you know, when they're exposed to this tech for too long and too early, is that they're not being given the opportunity sometimes to actually really hone in on those kind of basic skills that they need to learn from the get-go. So yes, Mark, you know, it's all good and well learning how to write an A on an iPad, but they need to master that pencil grip. That's something that's crucial, because you're going to get kids who can easily, you know, sort of write on an iPad with their finger, but they need to master the pencil grip. They need to master the art of reading all those letters together in their minds without having, you know what I mean? It's a different set of skills.
Yes, that fine motor skill is so important, isn't it, Cath? You want to pick up on this about using technology as a form of education, and I'm talking now from the youngsters 3 and up. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. I think that there is a wealth of information and a really lovely, wonderful ways for kids to learn things online and using apps and all these wonderful, wonderful tools that exist out there. But we cannot take away that doesn't replace the importance of the fact that, yes, children need to learn to write by their own hands, and they need to learn to do maths and they need to learn what's 2 + 2 and all these things that as adults we often don't even think about it. I mean, I can do my 6 times tables in my head, but my child is still learning that, and she can't always grasp that if she's learning it on an app. Sure, it can help augment what she's learned in school, but the first basic learning of a concept, etc., for me, should happen in a more personal environment. Stacey? Nicki?
I'm going to play devil's advocate here. 2 things. What if our children are using a stylus together with a tablet in classrooms as a substitute for pen and paper? That might help with pencil grip. And in 15, 20 years from now, when our children leave a school, considering that we all sort of come from middle-class suburbia, our children have great access to technology, how much writing do you think your kids are going to be doing on a pen and on a piece of paper? Are we still even going to be writing when we fill out forms? I don't know.
Nicki, you want to have a go at that one?
Yeah, it was just something that popped into my mind, is that Dave actually pointed out something to me last night. There's an app, I forget what it's called, but basically on the front kind of works, it explains to you in the iStore is that, in the App Store, sorry, is that you can essentially take a screenshot or almost scan, and I'm talking about an equation, so a technical equation. And your phone, obviously, with recognition, will work it out for you. And that, I cannot actually explain to you. First of all, it excites me because with Lucas starting school next year and the prospect of maths becoming a reality for me, which is a frightening reality, that you can pick up the phone and, get the answer to a technical equation just like that. And that frightens me because you think about the thinking that needs to go into that, and it's becoming easier to just, never mind Google. You've got basically there's an app for it. There's an app for everything. And it's frightening that those things are just there, and it's going to almost, their ability to then problem solve, where's that going to come from? How are they going to learn to problem solve if things just become too easy? So again, and on Stacey's point of the stylus and an iPad, I think it's great. But and again, so yes, also thinking about 20 years ahead, how much writing are they going to have to do? But when you write with a pencil, and it's something you learned in grade 1 or grade 2, there's a certain amount of pressure that has to be applied. With a stylus on an iPad, you can literally kind of swipe it along. How real is it? Again, I mean, it's all kind of, I suppose it depends on what's going to happen in the future, really.
Well, I've tried writing for an extended period, and I find that my hand completely cramps up now because I just don't have that muscle memory anymore. Everything is typed, whereas in the past I was writing 3-hour university exams, no problem at all. It's amazing how little I write these days. Here we are trying to get to grips with technology and how, as parents, we should be allowing our children to interact with technology. Are you confident that educationalists are up to speed? Let me start with you on that one, Cath. We defer so much to schools and say, well, they sort it out there. Are you satisfied that educationalists know how to handle technology and how much to use in educating children?
Short answer, no. And that sounds like an unfair response. But in my experience, I have found that schools can be very well equipped, and that's fantastic. But they have teachers that don't quite know how to support it, or kind of are good at computers, so end up being the computer teacher. I've also found, and this is not just from my personal experience, this is from sharing with other parents too, very often that we come across teachers who are frightened by the implementation of technology in their classroom. So they kind of try to ignore it. I've heard a story about a school where tablets have been rolled out to the children, and which is wonderful and what have you, so it's a kind of a textbook replacement, but teachers haven't been given the training to support their children in the classroom, and to understand that the children are only supposed to use those tablets for the textbook purposes and for educational apps in the classroom. So what you got is that teachers are feeling out of control and feeling demotivated because they're not being given enough support or enough education and training themselves to support the whole tablets in the classroom phenomenon. By the way, I'm a big supporter of tablets in the classroom, but only for high school.
Okay, Stacey, you got some thoughts on educationalists, teachers? Are they up to speed?
I was invited to a demonstration last year, I think it was by the iStore, and they had this expert from the UK down who was talking about, I think it was Joe Moretti, I could be wrong, he was talking about using iPads in the classroom, and I was sitting in a room with about 200 teachers, and I sensed a lot of fear amongst that group. Not really understanding how to go about integrating iPads in the classroom. So I think the best approach is really a train-the-trainer situation. It's no good, as Cath was saying, it's no good rolling out the iPads if the instructors don't know how to get the maximum out of them. David, I see there's a question on the side of the screen. Can I answer it quickly?
Please do, because I'm just not getting questions on the side of my screen at all. I'm allowing you to just jump in. What is it, Stacey?
It says, what is the most appropriate age for a child to own his or her own cell phone? Interestingly, Cath was doing some research for an article. We're going to write about it on DigiKids, and she put the question to her Facebook following, and it looks like the age most parents are getting their kids' cell phone is somewhere in between 10 and 13. And with some moms and dads saying as early as the age of 8. So that seems to be average.
Well, let me follow that up then. If they're getting their own phones, do you allow them to join social media platforms, Stacey?
I don't think so. You know, the entry level for most social media platforms is no under 13s. Cath, is that Instagram? Yes. Facebook as well. I don't think you can get a Gmail address if you're under the age of 13 as well.
Is that right, Cath?
That is very true. And also, when it comes to, you know, kids getting their own phone and what have you, I also am a big believer that it's child dependent, because what's good for an 8-year-old X is not always good for an 8-year-old Y. And I don't think there is a hard and fast rule, but I do think that the general consensus at the moment is, as Stacey says, between the ages of 10 and 13. I've just seen a question come up here. Just want to pick it up again. It's saying that it's from, I think it's from Suzanne, or is it? No, it's from Gwen. The school my kids go to insists on iPads from grade 5. She's concerned about how she can monitor it when her child is not studying or doing homework. Well, there are a number of ways that I would recommend monitoring. You can either implement software. There are lots and lots of software you can put on your child's devices, like NetNanny or MobiFlock. Those are great because the device can be anywhere, and you can get alerts when a child tries to access something that you've set as inaccessible according to filters. But also, it comes back to the relationship. Having your child say that this pop-up appeared and they were on Google and they Googled something and this picture came up in image search, that kind of thing. Being able to discuss and understand that your child must know that if they come across something, it's the great wide internet. It is going to happen. Nicki.
Yeah, Nicki?
Thanks. Yeah, I think what Cass just said now is probably one of the most important things to me at the moment, is developing the right relationship with my boys so that they do feel that they can ask me those questions. I think kind of a bit of a side effect of tech as well is, especially when you were talking now with parents and tech, is that, you know, your kind of face is always, you know, in front of a phone or in front of a screen. You're kind of cutting off then actual physical social relationships with your children. You're kind of making it almost sort of, you know, when this device is in front of me, this is what's important and not what you've got to say. And it sounds harsh, but I think from a child's perspective, I think that's so true. So I think if they understand that, you know, when you've got that thing, you can still ask questions, you can still talk. It's not an all-encompassing and all-absorbing, you know, device. I think that's so important. So it's almost taking that first step and making sure that your child has, you know, I mean, I wouldn't give my child who was a delinquent a cell phone. You know, I'd be petrified of what that child would get up to. If my child and I have a great relationship and we discuss everything, just like Cath and her daughter Cam do, which is really phenomenal and inspirational, is that you can actually trust them to have the conversations that they need to have with you. They're not going to run off to their friends to ask, or, you know, or just delve into something they're not sure of. You need to have that relationship first.
Yeah, Stacey, you want to add there?
Oh, I just wanted to say, for slightly younger children, if you're worried about what they're doing when you leave the iPad in their hands, just put it in airplane mode.
That's a very good point, actually, to put it in airplane mode.
Yeah.
When it comes to limiting a child's screen time, I wonder if we shouldn't, as parents, look at our own behavior, because the kids will be mirroring what we're doing as well. Possibly, if we spend a lot of time on our iPhones, on our iPads, they regard it as acceptable behavior. I suppose we shouldn't just be looking at what the kids are doing. We should also be looking at what we're doing. Stacey, or am I barking up the wrong tree here?
No, you're absolutely correct. I read an article the other day that said the reason why our generation, I'm specifically talking about parents my age, like Nicki and Cath, the reason why we are so fearful of our children using technology is we're the only generation to truly straddle the technology divide. We spent our childhoods playing with mud pies and Barbie dolls, and as adults we find ourselves immersed in technology. Our children, however, are growing up in that environment, and they're digital natives. And in a way, we're reflecting our fears onto them when perhaps they're not necessarily there for our kids.
Dadic, I saw your hand there. You want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny. A lot of us we'll be on Facebook during the day or whatever the case is, and there's an article that's done the rounds, everyone shared it, and it's about, putting your phone down, and you think about what you're doing yourself. So as a parent, you're going, oh, God, I spend too much time on my phone, need to spend too much, need to spend more time with my kids. But you're almost not, it's weird for me, because you'll think about how it affects you as an adult, but you're not then transferring that emotion to how your child is. So not thinking, you're almost going, you think about how much time you spend on your phone, but then you go off to a restaurant and, you hand your child the phone while you're waiting for your food. And then you kind of thinking, well, this is exactly what I'm doing in smaller doses with my children. You just, transferring that to them. And I think, just an example as well. Dave and I were out for lunch at a little restaurant here around the corner. And our kids were outside playing, and I'm proud of that. I'm really proud they're outside playing. Dave and I, it was a well-deserved break after a weekend spent indoors. The boys were outside playing, and there was a table next to us with 3 little girls. Cath, they must have been about Cam's age. And they were all on their iPads. And I'll get like lambasted for saying this out loud, but I think it's despicable. I really do. It drives me mad. I hate it, and people will hate me for saying it, but I hate it. And I sat there, and I'm so torn about what to do. And I just thought, well, anyway, it's not my children, it's theirs. But I just thought, how do you go for a family lunch on a Sunday afternoon and you've got 3 little girls sitting there on their iPads? Really?
Cath, I saw your hand there.
Nicki, I will be the first to admit, and Stacey and Nicki, you both know this about me. If you send me a message online, or you send me a tweet or a Facebook something, I respond very quickly. And I am the first to admit that I probably spend way too much time on my devices. But I will say 2 things. Number one is that we would never be in that situation that you're just talking about now, Nicki, where you are out having a special family lunch and the table is sitting on their phones. It might happen when we want to answer a question, because our family is famous for doing this. We'll have some kind of random brain fart conversation, and we'll want to know, it happens a lot. Cameron will ask a question about a planet or something like that, and we'll Google it, and we'll Google it together. But then the device goes away again, and we carry on the conversation. I have such an issue as well with people who go to kid-friendly restaurants or family restaurants, and the whole family sits there on their phone the whole time. Why bother leaving the house? Why bother even talking to each other? And again, I will admit that I am one of those people who constantly has her phone in her hand, but that's also, especially during the weekday, because that's when work is happening and everything. But it comes down again to having a relationship that relates to the technology, not having a technology that kind of maybe you'll have a relationship around. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Stacey, I wonder, we're coming to the end. I do want to ask you about your initiative called iPads for Lionhearts. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, it's an interesting story, Dave. As you mentioned, my son Travis is autistic, and I have a blog called Living Lionheart. And 2 years ago, for World Autism Awareness Month, which is in April, we decided we want to do something. So we sent out the word and said, does anybody have an old secondhand iPad that they don't use anymore? If you do, we'd like to play matchmaker and give it to a family with a child with autism. And one iPad came in. And we donated it to a young girl called Emma Hunt, who has Asperger's, and that was it. And then more iPads came in, and more iPads came in. And eventually I had a waiting list of families who couldn't afford an iPad but really wanted to explore it as a communication tool for their kids. And I told myself, if we got 12 iPads in 12 months, I would go ahead and start a charity. And we got 19 iPads in 12 months. So a year ago, I started a charity called iPads for Lionhearts, and we've been going strong ever since.
What makes an iPad for an autistic child so different as an iPad for a child who's not autistic?
This is quite, children with autism are often described as being a little bit robotic, which sounds like a terrible thing to say, but I genuinely think their brains almost work like computers. And for some reason, the interface, and specifically an iPad, I'm not talking about an Android or a Windows tablet, but the Apple interface, iOS, just seems to click for them. They find it very easy to use and very engaging to use, possibly more so than other children. And there are a number of amazing apps out there that children with autism are specifically using to communicate. Sentence builders, they tap on the word apple with the sign for the little boy that wants, I want an apple, and they use this to communicate. Quite interesting.
Yeah, for me, an autistic child it's the routine, it's knowing what's going to come next. They understand that there will be no surprises, and that's so important for an autistic child.
Absolutely, and you know there are those routine builder apps for children with autism, but I think they're quite nice for just a regular kid to have. You know, instead of a star chart, you know, if you use the potty, yes, you can get a virtual star on your iPad, which is quite exciting. And then perhaps they could even choose from a library of 100 stars instead of just the gold stick-on star that you've got. So very, very interesting applications out there at the moment. Kids.
I think it's a wonderful initiative. Do you have a website for that, Stacey?
Absolutely, it's www.ipads4lionhearts.co.za, and it's for the word for, not the letter for.
Okay.
Sorry.
Sorry, you want to add something else there? Sorry, Stacey, I clicked off you for a sec.
No,
you
it's
don't?
fine.
Okay. Nicki, some concluding remarks, and what I did like about our conversation is that we weren't saying to parents, if you give your child technology, you're a bad parent. We looked at where it's good and where it's bad. Some final thoughts from you on what kind of advice you have for parents who are possibly bewildered by the avalanche of technology?
Yeah, I think number one is just read some good resources, and as we've already pointed out, DigiKids is fantastic, iPads for Lionhearts is fantastic. I think for me, and I've just read a lot about this as well, is just take responsibility for your children. And when we're talking about children in schools and parents just going, you know, the school will deal with it, that's a massive bugbear for me. Your child is your child. Take responsibility for what he or she is doing at home, at school, out, wherever the case is, and that's in terms of personal behavior, in terms of iPad or tech use. Just be a responsible parent. When none of us are perfect. I stick my kids in front of the TV on a Saturday morning when I just want to like have a shower. But yeah, just take responsibility and do what works for you as a parent.
Was that an invader there, Stacey?
That was Ryan. Ryan says hello.
Hello, Ryan.
Ryan saying, "Mom, get off." Cath, a final word from you about some advice for parents. I think your website, DigiKids, is a fabulous resource. Anything else from you?
Basically, yeah, just to augment what Nicki said there is that the relationship is key, and your parenting needn't be disrupted by technology, but technology needn't be a child's technological development, and they're in comfort level in online can be created through that relationship with parents. So the most important thing to remember is that when you're Ryan, you are so gorgeous. Is to remember that the relationship comes first above anything else. So an app can't replace a mom.
Cath, we'll say good night to you, goodbye to you. Thank you very much. You were absolutely wonderful. We look forward to doing that again. Nicki, to you as well. Wonderful insights. Thank you so much for your time. And to you, Stacey, and all the best with iPads for Lionhearts. And Ryan, thank you very much for making a guest appearance. We did enjoy that.
Thank you.
And from me, David O Sullivan, thank you very much for joining us. The first of our IRIS sessions on the Trade Exchange, brought to you by BrightRock. Thank you for being with us. We'll see you again next time.